Hi and welcome to another video on British military swordsmanship with the sabre. In this particular lesson we're going to be looking at the point over the edge, and it's not so much a lesson, more an actual consideration of point versus edge, because frequently on our videos on YouTube people come out with comments such as why didn't you use the point more, why didn't you use so many thrusts and things like that. I'm going to go into some of the reasons why. Now when you're using a sword like this, thrusting is perfectly legitimate. A lightly curved blade like this, it was designed to be a cut and thrust blade, so you can do thrust work, it's no problem. But in terms of why you don't see as much thrust work to cut, well largely that's because people are comparing it to sports sabre, Olympic sports sabre, where you can use cut or thrust equally, and you will see both being used in Olympic sabre. Why we don't want to use it quite so much is because, again, we're looking at this from a martial perspective, so we don't just want to score a point, we actually want to incapacitate or kill our opponent, or simulate incapacitating or killing an opponent, and also protect ourselves. So if you watch, for example, Olympic sabre, when there's a lot of thrust work going on, you'll see an awful number of double hits, where, and what we would call a double hit is anything that would likely land even if it's placed a tempo after the initial strike. So you'll see someone thrust into the body, thrust into the face or in the arm, whatever else, and then they cut or thrust back, and you'll see an awful lot of that. And that is in part why we don't do quite so much thrusting with the military sabres, because when you're talking about a sword that is comparatively light and very quick on the rotations, the afterblows can be absolutely wicked. So for example, if I lunge like this and I miss my target for any reason, one because they've moved, they've parried, I've messed up, there's all kinds of reasons. If I've messed up and missed, we are really, really vulnerable, as opposed to when we actually step through and cut, we can carry through into other techniques very, very quickly and use the mass to just carry us around. And you'll see this all the time, where what happens is somebody lunges an outside guard like this, or even in preen, and it just gets displaced and they get hit on the head immediately. And even if that point landed, here's a huge issue with thrust work, is thrusts are not commonly incapacitating immediately. Even if you will die from them soon after or even days after, thrusts most part of the body won't incapacitate an opponent quickly. They will have enough energy left and vitality left to actually strike you back very hard, and that happens an awful lot if you look at documented accounts from sort of field doctors, from physicians, from coroner's reports, that kind of thing, with rapiers, with sabres, with bayonets going through people, and they're still just caving people's head in afterwards and stuff like that. So yeah, if you even land a thrust, you're still likely to get hit back if you don't quickly recover so safely, and it's not always easy to quickly recover safely. If it misses, you're in a massive amount of trouble. So those are your sort of big considerations, really. However, that being said, knowing the weaknesses of using the thrust with a sabre like this, and again, the rotations of these sabres are so incredibly fast because, one, their actual weight, they're quite light. An infantry sabre, this is actually a cut-down cavalry sabre, but it's not far off an infantry sabre now in terms of weight and length. You're talking about about 2 pounds to 2.1 pounds, something like 800 to 900 grams. They're quite light. They don't typically have a pommel. They often have just a smooth back strap. They rotate very, very quickly in the hand. So they're really, really fast on these rotations. They get to parries, they rotate around in full moulinettes or full parades incredibly fast. So you've really got to be careful on that thrust work. But as I said, you can then use that to your advantage. So you'll often see us in videos. One of my personal favourites from here is you can initiate a thrust to actually threaten to your opponent and only go halfway. Essentially you're using a feint. So we're just going halfway, sometimes with a blade engagement, and then transitioning through and taking their head. So you can use it to your advantage, the fact your opponent knows that thrusting is comparatively weak. So yeah, you can thrust, but when you're using the military sabre like this, you're probably only going to see thrust work. It depends on the opponent and what sort of style they've learned, but with this kind of sabre, maybe 10% of the attacks are actually going to be thrust. So it's nothing like a 50-50 split. So yeah, feel free to use the thrusts. Just bear in mind that you want to treat it as a martial fight. It's no good if you're going to get hit afterwards. So there you go, cut versus thrust with this sword. It's always a controversial subject, cut versus thrust, no matter which sword you're talking about, but that's a good overview for the Military Sabre. Thanks for watching.